Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, just like every night from 6 to 7. And sometimes when we're live, we have our microphones turned on, and sometimes we don't. And last night we didn't. So you guys on the radio heard the first half of the show, and you guys on social media just got to sit there and look at my face. And I was so disgusted last night when I got home. I was just like, God dang. I felt when I locked up the building last night and walked out of here, I felt like I'd lost a football game. I was like, golly. And you're out there for the whole world to see. It's life. It's out there. You're out there. You're trying to make the world a better place, and you can't even remember to turn on your daggone microphone. And so you were ready for the show. You were trying to take health to church. You were trying to share the message, and you just fumbled it and threw interceptions, and just Coach Dykes used to say, "Shot yourself in the foot." So that's what we did last night. We just messed it up, and I debated back and forth. I just kept thinking to myself, "Oh, you should just take it off the internet. Just delete that show. Just delete that show because someone's going to see that show and think you're an idiot." And they're going to be like, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm not going to do it. I just said a little prayer, and I was like, "Nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to just get rid of all the outtakes. Get rid of all the mistakes. You can't do that in life. You can't. Life is not about one-sided things. Life is not always about being perfect. It's not. And a matter of fact, it's dang hard to be perfect. It is. It's hard to get all this stuff right, even after you've been doing it for a year. But we just messed it up. We just messed it up last night, and I left it on there. I just said, you know what? I'll just leave it on there. There were some good things in the second half of the show, and you know what? I'm a second half kind of guy. So, it doesn't matter how many fumbles and interceptions you throw in the first half, you got to come back in the second half. And I haven't even got to halftime yet. I'm 53 years old. If I double that, that's 106, and my goal is 113. So we're still in the second quarter as far as I'm concerned. So we got some room to make some mistakes. And you know what? I think all you guys out there appreciate it. Really, deep down inside, you're like, "Hey, this is this. We're all human, and we're all in this thing together." And we're all just trying to make it through the day and try to figure out how to raise our families and get along with each other and make a living and keep this whole world turning. And sometimes we just don't get it right. But maybe tonight, maybe tonight we'll get it right. It tickles me to think sometimes you just get daggum bad at stuff. It's like, man, how can you not turn on your microphone? So I got it on. I'm hooked up on the radio. We're good to go on 98.7 Walk by Faith, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. That's what we're on over there. I think that's what we're still calling it. We're streaming on 987radio.com, and we are on the Live 365 app tonight, I believe, all over the world. So all you people all over the world that listened to us last night, I hope you got something out of that show. I got a little flustered in the second half and because I was mad at myself and it didn't go quite as cool as I wanted it to. But I think I got a good one for you tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about what we neglect decays, and that was a sentence my brother-in-law used to talk about. These part of this show is me sharing with you my evolution of learning about wellness that took a long time, and so I used to be exposed to some sentences along the way, and I didn't understand them. It just took me a long time to get to where I could understand them. And so one of the things that my brother-in-law used to say was, Dr. Housewright is his name, just passed away July 4th from a glioblastoma, sucky thing, right, that we had to deal with this summer. But his legacy will live on forever because it's going to live on and what he taught people, and go keep going. So I'm hoping I can contribute to that a little bit. But what he used to say, what you neglect decays, and he got it from somebody else, I'm sure, but it doesn't matter where it came from. It's a good sentence. And so that's what we're going to get into tonight. We're going to talk about, especially the cervical curve. in the degenerative disc disease issue, because that came up today. Had a patient go through an MRI, and she went to a nurse practitioner, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that as well. So that's what we got on tap for the show tonight, and everybody can hear me. Everybody's good to go. So let's get after it. Let's start off with an article, and this article fits. It goes right along with what we're um, trying to talk about tonight. But let's talk about this article right here, and I'm going to switch it around for you. This is pediatric text neck syndrome, and me personally, I hate that. I hate that word, text neck. That phrase, that syndrome is like. Um, they got to call it something, and everybody, got to have some sort of fancy title about stuff. It's a reverse cervical curve. It's a reverse cervical curve that's been the reverse cervical curve ever since I've been in chiropractic. But now all of a sudden we got to give it a name. We got to call it text neck because we're got our head down and all that sort of thing. And it comes from the journal Curious, April 23rd, 2023, volume 15, number 4, article E38034, in case you wonder where I got it from. Curious, Cureus. It's a scientific open source journal. So these guys, I'm not going to try to even pronounce that, but the study cites 26 references. But it's just basically talking about the increased prevalence of social media, mobile texting, video streaming, and gaming due to the widespread adoption of smartphones has led to emerging health concerns. It was very interesting. Zay and Debbie went to Honduras and on a mission trip. Zay and Debbie are platinum patients of the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and a big part of what we do here. And they went to Honduras on a mission trip. And so after they were working out on Monday morning, we sat for a minute and talked about it. And they were telling me that how poor this group was that they went to help. And they were talking about all the dynamics of what was going on. But they live, this family lives in they're in the jungle basically, and they just cut out like a little slum for them to live in. And she just said it was a little bitty cinder block house, had a mattress on one side, a mattress on the other side, a tin roof over the top of them. And they don't have they don't have electricity. They don't have running water. They don't have trash pickup. They're poor as heck. And they just have trash all over the place. She said that they just burn trash all day long in their front yards. It's just nasty. It's just trash everywhere. And diapers, food wrappers, just all kinds of stuff. She said they were actually trying to dig them up a little place to get this lady a garden, because this lady's got 3 children. I think a 14-year-old, an 8-year-old, and then a 2-year-old, and her husband got ran over. I said earlier, maybe on the show, he got ran over by a motorcycle. No, he was on his motorcycle, got ran over, and died. And so this lady's left on her own. But they were trying to dig up a garden for him, and they actually dug up a machete blade. Like it was just poverty at the worst conceivable level of poverty is what those people are living in. But they all had cell phones. That was something that was like, wow. They drank Dr. Pepper, and they had cell phones. And I was like, wow, like they hook them on that dopamine, right? That even in a third world country, which I don't even know if that, that's what we call it, but I'm not trying to be mean about that or anything. Even in the lowest level of poverty that we could possibly get to, we're dealing with cell phones. We're dealing with cell phones and posture, and what we do about posture. And I mean, that's kind of surprising, right? It's like, and think about that. If you don't have any hope, and they don't have any hope. They're stuck in a muck and mire of poverty they can't get out of. They have no way of getting. No one's come along yet to fix that problem. But why Dr. Pepper and cell phones, right? Well, it's because of brain. It's because of dopamine. It's because of something to give you some reason to move forward. Think about it. If your life sucks that bad, and they don't even know that it's that bad, but if you're living with a mom and three kids, the 14-year-old had to get out of school so that he could stay home and take care of the 8-year-old and the 2-year-old. So he lost his ability to get to school, and now they're all there. But what do they have? They have Dr. Pepper and cell phones, because that's enough to give us a little bit of neurochemistry to make us just go one more day. We'll just go one more day. It's kind of what you're doing with this show. If you're watching this show for a minute, you're gonna stick with me for as long as you neurologically can, and then you're gonna move and flip your phone, and you're gonna go to the next page. You're gonna move along. You're just gonna see it and then move along, and then see it, move along. Right? That's how we handle it now. Why are you doing that? Well, part of the reason you do that's because I'm boring. I get that. But the other part of that is because neurologically and neurochemistry, you're trying to move along with that, right? So now all of a sudden we've got this new thing. And the people want to call it text neck syndrome. I hate it, but that's what it's called, right? Uh, it's an overuse syndrome typically caused by repetitive stress injury of the cervical spine due to flexed and forward head positioning during prolonged engagement with mobile screens. Right? What are we doing? We're just looking at that thing with our head down. And I run a wellness office, and I've got anti-cell phone stuff all over my office. I got a big sign that right where people put their phones, where they're supposed to put their phones and their keys and their wallet, in a little basket on the wall, and it says, "Please turn your cell phone off." And what do? They sit there like this with their head down, waiting for their adjustment. They can't leave their phone in their car. People cannot leave their phone in their car and come get adjusted. They have to have their phone in their hand. I saw a guy pulled out in front of me today when I was on my way to Littlefield, pulled right out in the middle of the street, and I nearly T-boned him. I had to hit my brakes, and his face was just stuck in his phone like that. Like, and it's the world. It's in third world countries, right? It's not just you guys looking at your phone right now, watching me on the show. You radio people are the advanced ones of the bunch. You radio people are the ones that are y'all are actually listening to us on the radio instead of checking us out on your phone. But yeah, there's a problem with it, right? There's a problem. Prolonged exposure to poor postural habits in children may result in long-lasting musculoskeletal issues and a higher risk of spine-related disorders later in life. There's no question about that. There's no question it's going to. And why is it going to? Why is it going to do that? And go back one more time for the 186th time on the show. Go back and realize when you were 3 months old, you rolled over on your tummy. You got your head up. You got your head up and your eyes up, and it started the development of your frontal lobe. And it took 25 years from that moment to the time your frontal lobe was developed. And you were moving and running and playing and jumping. And man, I just think about all the playing we did as little kids. Like we were on the move all the time. In the 70s and 80s, we didn't have but 3 channels at my house. There was no ESPN. There was no cable. Cable television was basically nothing. We wore our street out with our bikes. Me and Robert Reed and Michael and my little brother, we were out there on our bikes. We were wearing that street out. We moved into our house, and it had the most immaculate front yard. Those people that lived in our house before we did took care of that yard. It was so beautiful, manicured and beautiful. And we moved into that house, and we wore that thing out. It was just a big old dirt. It was just a worn down spot by the time we got finished with that front yard, because we played football in that yard every single day nearly. I mean, we were just always. We had a fort out there, and there was kind of a little wooded area out behind the house. No, you wouldn't let your kids go over there now, but back in the 70s and the early 80s, we were back there in the woods. We were having stick fights with each other, and we were running and digging and making forts and hauling old. We went and found an old front seat of an old car somebody had thrown out there in the woods, and we picked it up and brought it back to our fort. We had a cool old fort, and just constantly moving, constantly moving. Then at age 25, that frontal lobe developed. That's not what's happening with our kids these days. They're just not doing it. They're not on their feet running. They're not climbing stuff. They're not gripping things, and it's gonna end up with long-term problems eventually. We are going to see it. As mobile devices usage continues to increase, the pediatric population is becoming particularly vulnerable to the development of kyphotic deformities in the growing and premature spinal structure. And what they're trying to say here is as those bones are developing, as those young bones are developing, and even older bones, but as those bones are developing and they get constant pressure on them, you will actually see plastic deformation. You'll actually see changes in the bone structure that are permanent. Like they'll once you smash the bone in a certain direction, and I'll show you some of it when we get to degeneration here in just a minute. Once you smash the bone in a certain direction, that bone's not going to go grow back. And what you're going to end up with is what this kyphotic deformity is when your chest caves in and you've got that hump. And I get a lot of people that say, hey, what's causing this hump right there on the back of my neck? Like right down there at the base of my neck. How come I got this hump? And you know what the second sentence will be? My mama has that has that same hump. How come that? It's genetics, right? And I'm like, nope. Go back to Friday night show. Listen to the Bruce Lipton show. I got it on video. Go back and check that out. And it's not genetics. It's get yourself up. Take yourself to the gym and go for a walk. Get your brain firing, right? So just be aware of it. If you've got kids, you've got grandkids, they need to get their eyeballs up. Make them. I told one kid with headaches, he came in on Monday, been having headaches. He was sitting on my table doing this. When I walked around the corner, I'm like, I wonder why he got headaches. You know, as a freshman in high school, how come you're having headaches? I wonder why. I wonder what's pulling on the back of my skull. I wonder why exactly that's happening, right? And I said, well, at least do this. Hold your phone up here. If you're going to look at your phone all day long, get your eyeballs up. Get your head up, get your eyeballs up, and see if you can get your eyes up so that you could keep your eyes above the horizon. It's neurologically sound. It does bring your chest and everything up. Then you lose that kyphotic deformity. If you're a parent, man, I'm telling you, you got to do something about that. And a lot of the parents, especially of young children today, started with the phone. So they have their own phone and they don't really have time to deal with their children because they got to look at their phone. So they give their children a phone so they'll just hush so that they'll have time to look at their phone. Sheesh. It's a bad deal we got going on right there. We need to address it. They're writing literature about it. They're calling it text neck syndrome. And let's just call it reverse cervical curve, and then let's understand the dynamics of it. So it leads me into the topic of tonight. I have a patient that started with me. She's got some reverse cervical curve. She's got some degeneration in her neck. She's gone to her. She's got an MRI. She told me, she said, I went to the doctor. The doctor ordered an MRI. I was like, okay, fine. I don't need an MRI, but that's fine. We'll check it out. I mean, you could do what you want to. So, but she's new to this whole chiropractic thing. She's not 100% sure about what's going on. And there was some neurological things we found in our test, and that scared her a little bit. And she went and got that done. And then so she's been waiting for the MRI results, and she's a little bit impatient, but she's fair enough. I mean, she wants to know what the heck is going on. So she she finally said, she came to see me today, and she finally said that she got in touch with her. She finally called, and that the person called her back, and it's a nurse practitioner. And look, I'm not an anti-nurse practitioner person, but the first thing she said is, I went to see my doctor, and then my doctor ordered MRIs, 3 of them: brain, cervical, and lumbar MRI. My doctor ordered all 3 of them. And then she told me it was a nurse practitioner. Then she told me that her nurse practitioner wouldn't call her back. And I'm trying to tell you, it's not the same. There's not the same level. And if you're a nurse practitioner, then you need to understand it as well. It's not. I'm not coming at you. I'm not being critical about it. I'm just saying that there 12 years of doctrine versus getting your nurse practitioner's license is not the same education. And so she got some information on there. There were some diagnoses that were put on there before she got the MRI in order for her to get the MRI. And so this patient is all confused. She's like, why, where did that diagnosis come from? Why is it on there? And what was happening? And what do I do now? And guess what happens? As soon as the results come back, that she doesn't know how to break all that stuff down. She doesn't have anything she's going to do about it. The nurse practitioner doesn't have anything she's going to do about it. She doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't know what we've been doing with it. She made up some diagnoses just to get the MRI paid for. And now what does she do? Refer to a neurosurgeon. Absolutely not necessary. 100% not necessary at this point to refer to a neurosurgeon. Okay? That's the medical model we live in these days. We got to go from one thing to the next and do that, and you go to this doctor and you go to this doctor. But I tried to explain to her, and I wanted to make sure very clearly, that she understood, look, they found degenerative disc disease, they found a bulging disc in the neck, the brain was completely clear, all that. So that's the only thing I really cared about. Was there anything going on in the brain? No, nothing structural. So everything was fine. So I thought I would share some step-by-step concepts about what you neglect decays. And I get this statement a lot. I get this statement a lot in wellness, and people will say to me, "Well, I'm fine. Everything is fine. I don't need you. You're not really necessary to me yet. I'll just wait till I need you." Well, I want to show you some pictures. I want you to think about. I want you to look at that. There's a picture right here, and you guys on the radio, what I'm showing is the stages of tooth decay. Okay, the stages of tooth decay, and I want to show you how you can have a cavity. And I want to ask you the question: do you have a perfectly healthy tooth on Tuesday, and then wake up on Wednesday morning with a cavity? Is that a good question? Do you have a perfectly healthy tooth on Tuesday night and then wake up in the morning with a cavity on Wednesday morning? No, absolutely not. And everybody here knows that, right? Everybody knows that there's a process that takes place. There's a process of decay that takes place before we're symptomatic. Before we're able to feel the decay, there's a process ongoing. I've heard 7 years on a tumor large enough to palpate on a self-exam for a lady on a breast tumor. I've heard 7 years. There's a process. Cancer doesn't just, you're not perfectly healthy in all your cells today and then have a brain tumor tomorrow. That's not what happens. It's a process. It's a process. And that process is taking place on a subsymptomatic level, a below symptomatic, an asymptomatic level. I don't feel it. It's just going wrong. And then all of a sudden, bam, I feel it. And if we look at tooth decay, it's really easy because we can see how it starts to, it says the enamel caries is what they're calling it right here. right? So the outer shell, it just starts to break down the enamel on the outside. And then it's called a dentin carry. Now we're moving further in on the tooth. And then finally we're going to hit they're calling it pulpitis. Pulpitis. Yeah. What you guys can break that one down. Pulpitis. What does that mean? What does itis mean? We all know that. It means inflammation, right? So that's the pulp part of the tooth. And then we're going to get to the middle of the tooth. We might start feeling it at that point because we've got some nerve supply at that point. But then we're going to get down into that nerve down there at the bottom of that tooth. And now we're really going to feel it. It's a process. It's a process that took place over time. And we get it when we're talking about teeth. Everybody gets it when we're talking about teeth. Though we don't get it when we're talking about our spine. And we're going to take a break on the radio here in just a second. We got about 30 seconds. We're going to take a break on the radio, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to break down from a spinal standpoint what happens and what we could do about it and how we can stop it. So stick around with us. You guys on the radio, stick around with us. Let's take a break for a couple minutes, and then we'll be back, and we'll break down the rest of this degeneration, and then we'll all go eat some healthy supper. We've got sweet potato bakers on the menu tonight, so we'll be right back. Yeah, we can go through so many different examples of the things that we neglect, right? We can say, well, because they used to say this all the time. Well, if you neglect your yard, you get weeds. If you neglect your relationship, then you get divorced. You have problems. You know how long it took me? You know how long it took me as a married man to figure out that the first thing and the most important thing in my life every single day has to be Leslie? It took me a long time to figure that out. And I started dating Leslie when I was 16 years old. And I probably didn't figure that out until, well, let's see. I think I figured it out somewhere around 2007. I was probably 37 years old. When I finally figured it out, I started when I was 16, 37. What is that? 21 years? 16, 26, 36? Yeah. 21 years it took me. I'm slow on the uptake, they say. That's what my father-in-law used to say. It's like, man, it took me 21 years to figure that out. The first thing I've got to do is make sure that she understands that she's the most important thing in my life. I've got my faith and I've got the rest of that stuff. But I'm telling you, when I put this radio show in front of her, I get problems in my marriage. When I put my office in front of her, I get problems in my marriage. When I put the whatever else thing that I think is important, playing golf or going to see my friends or doing whatever it is in front of her, I end up with problems in my marriage, right? So I learned in 2007, hey, Jason, don't do that. Dude, wake up every morning, and that's what I did this morning. I woke up this morning, I put my snooze on, I hit the snooze, and I rolled over, and I held her for 9 minutes. I rolled over this morning for 9 minutes, and I held her. I put her first. Instead of just getting up out of bed and going on with my day, I rolled over, and I just held her for 9 minutes. So she knows that, hey, babe, you're the first thing that I start my day off with if I have the opportunity. Now, I got to teach a class on Monday and Thursdays, so she knows that. But those other 5 days of the week, she's first. I put her first. I learned to do that. There's what you neglect decays. If I neglect her, I'm going to have trouble, and I don't want trouble. I'd rather have a happy marriage. Let me get us back on the radio. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are talking about what you neglect decays tonight. And I want to get into the cervical spine. So I want to share, we're going to share x-rays with everybody And um, and we're going to talk you guys on the radio through them. So this one's the first one. And so you don't know this, I promise you. There's no way to look at a person and tell if they have a reverse cervical curve. You can't see them. You look at them, and you don't uh, you can't tell if what they're dealing with is a reverse cervical curve. You have to get an X-ray of it. And you've got to get an X-ray of it, and that's why we take a lateral cervical X-ray on almost everybody that comes into the office, regardless of what their problem is, because I can map it out neurologically back to their brain, up into their brain, right side to left side, mapping it back down, and I'll go over that here in just a second. But this we're looking at is that we're on you guys on the radio. We're looking at a cervical curve on one side of the screen. And you guys can go back tonight, go back to the Walk by Faith Facebook page, and they'll share this video, and you can watch it on there. But the left side of the screen is a perfect cervical curve. It's a proper cervical curve, right? And if you look at each one of the bones, this is C2. Here's your atlas right here at the top, and then this is C2. This is all your cervical spine start. It's C's. That's your cervical. That's your neck. So here's C2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and they even got T1 in this picture. And what you notice is that each one of these bones is touching. The back of the bone is touching the green line. That is the way that the curve is supposed to be. That's what we want, right? But in this particular picture, what we've got is we've got what we call a reversed cervical curve. That's why I hate the text neck syndrome, because that's what's happening. We just have a reverse cervical curve. And a few weeks ago we did you can go back and look at disc degeneration, but we did a show on the blood supply to the disc, which is very little. It's just on the outer 1/3 where the nerves are, and how you keep a disc properly hydrated and functioning properly. And you got to it takes movement. It takes movement in order to. They're calling it diffusion now. When I was in school, they called it imbibition. The movement of that disc. And I always think of a sponge. I think of squeezing a dirty sponge. You take a wet sponge and wipe off a window seal that hadn't been wiped off in a long time. It's just dusty as heck. And you just wipe that window seal off with that sponge. You're going to have dirt all over that sponge. Okay, in order to wash that sponge out, you got to stick it underneath a water hose or a sink or something, and you got to squeeze it back and forth. And what you're doing is when you squeeze it and you let go of it, it sucks the water into the middle of the sponge, and then you squeeze it again and it pushes that dirty water out. And you squeeze it and let go, and you squeeze it and let go, and you squeeze it and let go. And while you're underneath the water, and you keep doing that, and you'll eventually clean that sponge. You'll get all that dirt off of that sponge. Those discs are basically the same thing because they don't have blood supply. What's in blood? What's in blood? Lots of stuff. But number one, oxygen is in blood. And number two, fuel, nutrients. Our nutrients is in the blood. That's how we get our nutrients, is through our blood. That's why when we talked about last week that on Friday night with Dr. Lipton's stuff, that phospholipid bilayer of the cell wall, which is hydrophilic and then hydrophobic and then hydrophilic, it sucks that water down on it, and then you got to transport it through the proteins, right? Well, in this particular case, you got to be able to diffuse from the bottom end plate, the end plate of the vertebrae on the bottom, or the top end plate. That's the bottom part of the bone, is where basically the blood supply is just going to come down there. It's going to make a loop. It's going to drop off the oxygen and the glucose and the nutrients, and then it's going to return back. And now you've just got it laying down there. And what you got to do is you got to move the disc. The disc needs to move in order for it to create that imbibition and bring that nutrients, suck that nutrients into the middle of the disc, so that those cells that are living in between those discs, you, that's how they stay healthy. And so if you're not getting that movement, so when you lose your curve, then you bend your head forward, and so you start to put pressure, you start to bind it, right? If I bend this thing, if I have a book in my hand and I bend it and I keep bending it and I keep bending it, where is it going to crease? Where is the the book going to crease? Is it going to crease at the top or the bottom of the page? Let's take a page. Let's take a piece of paper, and let's take that, and let's start bending it, and let's start bending it, and let's start bending it, and keep bending it until we get it all the way bent. Okay, where is it creasing? It's creasing at the bottom, right? There's nothing wrong with the top of the page. There's nothing wrong with the top of the page on the other side, the top or the bottom of the page. But look what's happened to the middle of the page. It's creased. We just creased it. It's like, why? Why did it crease there? Because that's where the pressure, that's the physics of it. That's where the pressure came in, and the pressure was on the middle of the page, which caused it to crease. Now, look at the neck in the same exact way. You're supposed to have a curve that's going in one direction, and you've completely reversed that curve going in the other direction. So what are you doing? You're creasing it down here at the bottom. What's going to happen to these discs at the top? Nothing. That's why when people come in with degenerative disc disease and they give me that old nonsense about how, well, I'm just getting old. You think it's just because I'm old? No, because this disc right here was born on the same disc day that this disc was. Your C2, C3 disc was born on the same day that your C5, C6 disc was born, right? We all know that. One of those discs is not older than the other one. They're both the same age, right? So why is this disc down here at the bottom in the beginning stages of degeneration? Because the curve is wrong. Now, if you go get an x-ray report, if you go to your medical doctor and you get an x-ray report, first of all, your medical doctor is going to take the x-ray, then they're going to send the x-ray to a radiologist, and then the radiologist is going to write a report and send it back. Go look at all your x-rays or all your MRIs. The person that signed the bottom of the radiology report is not your doctor, especially if you go to a nurse practitioner, right? You're going to get a report back. You're going to get an MRI report or you're going to get an x-ray report back, and they're going to say everything is fine. Maybe some degenerative disc disease at C5, C6, beginning stages. They're going to say everything is fine. You go to me and you bring me that neck right. I take an x-ray of that neck right there. It's not fine. It's absolutely not fine. Because why? Because I'm a wellness guy and I know where you're headed. I've been down that road. I can see it. I've seen it lots of times. There is a washed out bridge. There's a tree that fell over. There's a big old giant pothole down there. And if you head down that road at 75 miles an hour, you are going to be headed towards destruction. That's bad. That's bad news down that road. But Doc, you're being overreactive because I'm fine. I don't have any symptoms at all. I came here because my back hurts, my low back hurts. But then you'd take an x-ray of my neck and you'd tell me that there's something wrong with my neck. Well, if someone said you had a beginning stages of tooth decay, you might want to do something about it before your tooth rots out, right? And we would say yes. Well, this is the same thing. What we neglect decays. What we neglect decays. If we neglect our teeth, we get cavities. If we neglect our yard, we get weeds. If we neglect our spouse, we get divorced. If we neglect our kids, we get hellions, right? We get rebellious little rugrats or something, right? If what we neglect decays. So what happens if we take this particular neck that has this degeneration, but we don't have any bone spurring going on at this point? Got a little bone spur right there, but we don't. It's not too bad, right? What happens if we leave it alone and wait? If we say, well, I'll tell you what, doc, I'm just going to wait until I really need you. I see what you're saying with that whole neck thing, but I'm not buying any of that because no one ever, I went to my real doctor and my medical doctor, and he said everything was fine. And he said, plus I should never get my neck adjusted anyway because you guys kill people, right? No, you guys have heard that. That's all hogwash, right? Okay, here's what happens when we neglect it. That's the beginning stages. And then, let me see. There we go. Now I got to find it. There we go. Now, so you guys on the radio, I've got basically the same structure, different patient. Okay? I got basically the same structure, different patient, different time frame on neglect. Now we got a totally different picture down here. We've got a C5, C6 disc that's pretty degenerative at this point. We've got bone spurring on the front. We've got bone spurring on the front. There's a ligament. Remember that anterior longitudinal ligament that runs down the front of the disc, the front of the spine, all the way from top to bottom. We've got that anterior longitudinal ligament that's running down there. And what are we getting? We're starting to get calcification of the anterior longitudinal ligament because you got to go back to the study done with the rabbits. Remember when they broke the rabbits' legs, that cruel study, and then they took those rabbits and they put them in a machine that moved their leg. And what did they find out? They found out that if you take a solid bone and you move it back and forth, how cruel is that? Like break your arm right in the middle between your elbow and your wrist. Just break your arm right there. And then put you in a machine where you're just moving it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What will the body do? The body will lay down cartilage. The brain will say, holy crap, if you're going to make a joint out of that, I better put joint material in it. I better start sending cartilage material to that area so that you can make a joint out of that bone that used to be a solid bone. But if you put a cast over the top of it, then the body will send bone material to weld it back shut and heal that broken bone. It's amazing what the body will do because you're putting it in an environment that says, well, dude, if you're going to make a joint out of it, I better move it. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's why in the 1970s, if you blew out your knee, we've had this conversation before, you got in a cast from your hip to your ankle. Your leg was locked down in a cast to let your knee heal. But now, that's not what happens. If you blow your knee out, now they'll have you in an air cast moving that knee the night of surgery. They'll do surgery on your knee and then they'll be moving that joint. Why? Because they don't want you to put bone down in that joint. They want you to put cartilage down in that joint. And this is what's happening in this particular area of the neck. Because of this reversal, because the red line is behind the green line, what we've got is we've got compression right there. We've got compressive forces of the weight of the head compressing down on that C5, C6 disc. That disc is bulging. If you smash the little Debbie snack cakes with the oatmeal cookies inside and you smash them, what will you get? That cream filling will bulge out the side of those cookies. I know you guys don't eat cookies. That stuff is garbage. But you remember back in the day when you used to have those things, looked like a little Oreo, right? Smash those 2 oatmeal cookies down and the disc bulges. And they'll say, well, oh my gosh, you've got a disc bulge in your neck. You better not see a chiropractor. Hogwash. That doesn't even make any sense. It's like you got a disc bulge in your neck. You need to get that disc to quit bulging. How do you do that? You got to get it to move properly, and you got to get that joint to move properly, and you got to get your curve back in your neck. And why do you lose your curve? I'm fixing to go over that. Lots of different reasons. But I just wanted to show you this picture because I wanted to show you what happens when you neglect it. It doesn't improve. What you neglect decays. It's not going to improve over time. You are not going to take that first x-ray and then come back and see me in a year and be better. That's not going to happen. It's going to get worse. And I got another I got another case. I might actually bring that up because I have a pre and a post case from several years in between. And in that pre and post case, it's obvious. I've got the pre picture and the post picture. Maybe if I can get that done for tomorrow night's show, I'll put that on tomorrow night's show. But here's what's happening. This section of the neck is not moving properly, so it's decaying. And if you leave that alone, what you're going to end up with is surgery, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So that is another one right there. So let me move to another picture here, because had this one come in, and now this is the first visit. This is the initial X-ray, and what we've got going on right here is I forgot to ask her to take her earrings out, so I've got some earrings in there. So you'll have to forgive me with that one. But sometimes I forget to do that, and that's not proper. And if the radiologist saw that, they would say you should take the earrings out. And I 100% agree with you. You should take the earrings out. But you know what? I'm looking at that curve, and those earrings aren't bothering me. I don't have anything they're covering up that's causing me a problem. So I just move on past it. And I try to get to the most important thing is what's happening right here. But one of the things that's going on right here is our chin is down. And you say, well, yeah, that's why you have a cervical curve problem is because you took the x-ray with their chin down. Nope. I asked them to stand there, put their shoulder up against the wall, and look straight ahead. I want you to look at that picture right in front of you. And that person looked at the picture. They looked at the picture like that. Their head is down. Why? I'll show you in just a minute. But here's the initial one. And we had bone spurring happening. We have degeneration here. There's 2, 3, 4. So we got degeneration at 5 and C5, C6, and degeneration at C6 and C7. But look how clean these are up here. These are clean and beautiful because there's not any of this creasing going on in those discs. They're moving properly. They're hydrating the disc properly. Their imbibition is working. They're cleaning that disc and they're keeping it healthy. But down here, it's not happening because we've got this reversal and we've got this compression. And if you neglect it, it's going to decay. All right? So what happens, and I just want to show you, and you might be able to see it, and we'll talk about it. But I just wanted to show you, just if you just can notice a little bit, this is just after a couple weeks of care, of how the chin angle came up. The chin angle came up and we started to straighten it. It doesn't look so far forward now as much as it looks, it's more straight up and down. We were starting the process of correcting the curve. We're doing brain work and cervical curve work, and we're starting the process of correcting the curve. And you can correct the curve. You got to get to work on it. It's got to be a high priority. You got to take the time to get it to move in the direction that you want it to move. And you can get it to come back. But you can also get that chin up a little bit, and you can get that chin up by firing that frontal lobe, getting the brain right. And that's part of the reason we lose the curve is because it goes in that direction. And so I wanted to show you what happens, and you guys probably have seen this before, but I thought I'd just show it anyway. What happens when you eventually get to the point where you've let it decay too long? You neglected it. It just kept decaying, It just kept decaying. It just kept decaying. And then all of a sudden, there's nothing else you could do. And now you got to come in here and put plates and screws in it. Because now what's going on is you've got this compression, you've got this radiating pain that's running down your arm that you can't get any relief from, and it's like hurts all the time. It's just like, oh, this is killing me. Man, my hand is on fire. It's coming back to my shoulder blade. It's firing down in the back of my shoulder blade. It's just like, ouch. It's not doing good, right? And that's what you'll end up with. Look at these other discs up here. These other discs up here are completely fine and healthy. But you got one spot, and so and we had to take it out. We had to remove the whole disc. We had to put a little cage in there, and then we had to screw that thing back into place. And that's what you end up with, is you end up with plates and screws in your neck. And this same particular person, the same exact person, if you look at what's going on in their lumbar spine, yeah, what do we have? Multiple levels of degeneration in the lumbar spine. The person has a plate and screws in their neck, but when you take the picture of their lumbar spine, they've got multiple levels of degeneration. Why? Because their spine is not moving properly over long periods of time, and the chemistry is wrong. These people are inflamed. And we went into that pretty good. And I'm not really trying to talk about that tonight as much as I'm trying to talk about what you neglect decays. If you neglect it, it will continue to get worse, and you will be dealing with it somewhere down the road. I could promise you that. And it is affecting the way that your brain is firing, right? So that's what happens if we just keep going. All right. So now, what are some of the things that affect it? And so some of the things that are affected is our flexor muscles. All right. Why do we lose that curve? We lose it for a couple different reasons, but one of the reasons we lose the curve is because we are not inhibiting our flexor muscles. Our SCM muscle, let's see if you can see it. There's one right there. That SCM muscle right there. That muscle and this muscle on this side are attached to the base of my skull. And it's right here. It's this muscle right there. That SCM muscle will tighten, and it will start to pull that head forward. And then if we keep our eyes down all the time, here's our text neck syndrome. We keep our eyes down all the time. We're not shutting off that frontal lobe is not shutting off those muscles. We're getting an increased amount of tone in the SCM muscle, and we're pulling the head down, and our eyes are going down, and the combination of that is reversing that curve. You say, well, Doc, I was in a whiplash accident when I was a kid. Okay, fine. You were in a whiplash accident and your frontal lobe's not working. I got bucked off a horse. Well, okay, fine. You got bucked off a horse and your frontal lobe is not working. And you're starting to shorten that anterior longitudinal ligament. And you're shortening that ligament on the front of your neck, and it's pulling your neck down right there, and it's causing you problems. So what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? There's your pec muscle that gets tight. There's your bicep muscle. If I can find it, there it is. There's your bicep muscle right there. So there's your pec muscle. There's your SCM muscle. All those things are going to shorten when your brain's not firing properly. And what do you say? Well, Jason, what do you mean by that? Because I don't understand that. Like, why? What are you saying? Like, my brain controls these muscles. Yes, I'm saying your brain controls these muscles. I'm saying that your brain turns off your SCM. Your brain turns off your pec. Your brain turns off your bicep. And there's a pathway from the brain down through the spine. Most of it crosses over, but not all of it crosses over. And that part that not all of it crosses over is the part that actually has some control over that inhibition of the flexor muscles. It's coming from the brain. The brain is causing this tightness in your neck because the brain is losing its function, right? Remember our little homunculus guy? this homunculus and all the places of it. Yes, well, here we go. Here's the parts of the brain, and that frontal lobe is dealing with that, and it's coming down through your spinal cord, through your brainstem to your spinal cord to the muscles of your neck, and it's keeping you down. So how do you lose frontal lobe? Keep your eyes on your phone all the time. Stay off your feet. Keep your head down and watch your brain start to atrophy. And when your brain atrophies, all your flexor muscles are going to tighten. You're going to screw that down. You're going to put pressure on that disc. And then what's going to happen is you're going to end up with degenerative disc problems. And if you neglect it, you will end up with radicular pain. It'll have nerve pain running down your arm, and it changes the way that your brain functions. Hey, that's a lot of stuff. I appreciate you guys listening tonight. I hope that was better than last night. I hope we have all of our microphones on. Hope you heard that whole thing. And we will be back tomorrow night. We got a busy day at the Rock Health and Wellness Center tomorrow, and we'll be back tomorrow night at 6, and we'll see if we can talk about some more healthy stuff. If I can help you, please let me know. 806-794-0400, or send me a message, and we'll be back to you soon. You guys have a great night.